The Galactic Council had warned humanity about the Vorax for 3 standard cycles before first contact actually happened. The warnings came through diplomatic channels, through emergency broadcasts, through every possible means of communication the Council could think of. The Vorax were apex predators, they said. The Vorax had destroyed 17 civilizations. The Vorax could not be reasoned with, could not be bargained with, and most importantly, could not be stopped. Ambassador Krickstahl of the Menthian Collective delivered the final warning personally to the United Earth government. He stood before the assembly, his 4 arms trembling with what humans would later learn to recognize as extreme fear. "You do not understand," Krickstahl said, his translator rendering his words in a monotone that failed to capture his terror. "The Vorax are not like other species. They do not want resources. They do not want territory. They want only to hunt, to kill, to prove their dominance over all other life forms. Your species is young. You have not faced a true predator race. You cannot comprehend what is coming." Secretary General Maria Santos listened patiently. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes that had seen humanity through 2 civil wars and a climate catastrophe. She had learned long ago that panicking never solved anything. "Ambassador," she said when he finished, "we appreciate the warning, truly, but I have a question." Krickstahl's eye stalk swiveled toward her. "Yes. Has anyone ever tried being nice to them?" The translator hummed for a long moment, apparently struggling with the concept. Finally, it produced a series of confused clicks. Krickstahl's skin shifted through several colors that humans would later learn indicated complete bewilderment. "Nice," he repeated. "Secretary General, I do not think you understand. The Vorax stand 3 meters tall. They have 6 limbs, 4 of which end in claws that can slice through ship hulls. Their hide is resistant to most energy weapons. They reproduce rapidly and mature within 2 standard years. They have hunted my people for 6,000 years. Being nice is not a strategy." Santos nodded thoughtfully. "I see. What about food? Do they like treats?" The Menthian ambassador left Earth that day convinced that humanity was doomed. He filed his final report with the Council, recommending that all civilized species maintain a safe distance from Sol system until the Vorax had finished with humanity. It was, he wrote, a tragedy, but there was nothing to be done. 3 months later, the Vorax arrived. The first ship emerged from hyperspace near Jupiter, its hull covered in the bones of previous victims. It was a hunting vessel, designed for a single purpose. Inside were 47 Vorax warriors, each one eager to add human skulls to their collection. The ship's commander was named Krathvor. He was old for a Vorax, nearly 40 standard years, and he had earned his position through countless successful hunts. His personal trophy room contained specimens from 12 different species. He had been looking forward to adding humans ever since the scouts had first reported their existence. "Scan the system," Krathvor ordered. "Find their population centers. We begin the hunt at dawn." His second-in-command, a younger warrior named Thesk, operated the ship's sensors. The results made him pause. "Commander," Thesk said, "there is a vessel approaching, a small one it appears to be, unarmed." Krathvor's 4 eyes narrowed. "Unarmed? Are they surrendering already? How disappointing." "They are hailing us, Commander." "Put it through." The view screen flickered to life, revealing a human female. She was middle-aged, with dark hair and a warm smile. Behind her, Krathvor could see what appeared to be cooking equipment. "Hello there," the woman said. "My name is Dr. Elena Vasquez. I'm with the United Earth Xenobiology Division. We've been expecting you. I'm sure you're hungry after such a long journey. Would you like some food?" Krathvor stared at the screen. In all his years of hunting, no prey had ever offered him food. It was so unexpected that he found himself momentarily unable to respond. "We've prepared several options," Dr. Vasquez continued, apparently unbothered by his silence. "Based on your biology, we think you might enjoy our beef. It's from large herbivores we raise on our planet, very rich in protein. We've also got some fish, which are aquatic creatures. And for dessert, we have something called chocolate. Most species seem to love it. Thesk leaned toward his commander. Is this a trap? It must be, Krathvor growled. But even as he said it, his stomach rumbled. The journey from their homeworld had been long, and the ship's rations were not particularly appetizing. We'll come to you, Dr. Vasquez offered. I'm an excellent cook, and I'd love to learn more about your species. We humans are very curious creatures. We like to understand things. Against every instinct he had, Krathvor agreed to let her board. Dr. Vasquez arrived with 3 assistants and enough food to feed a small army. She showed no fear as she walked past the towering Vorax warriors, setting up her cooking station in their ship's mess hall as if she did this every day. Now then, she said, tying an apron around her waist, who's hungry? The first meal changed everything. The Vorax had evolved on a harsh world where food was scarce and competition was fierce. Their own cuisine, if it could be called that, consisted of raw meat torn from whatever they could catch. They had never experienced seasoning, cooking techniques, or the concept of flavor enhancement. When Krathvor took his first bite of perfectly grilled ribeye steak, seasoned with garlic and rosemary, his 4 eyes went wide. A sound emerged from his throat that his crew had never heard before. It took Dr. Vasquez's assistant several minutes to identify it as pleasure. Good, Dr. Vasquez asked. Krathvor did not answer. He was too busy eating. By the time the meal was over, the 47 Vorax warriors had consumed 300 pounds of beef, 50 pounds of fish, and an entire crate of chocolate. They sat in various states of contentment, their earlier aggression forgotten. We have more, Dr. Vasquez said. Back on Earth, much more. Different foods, too. Hundreds of different animals, thousands of different preparations. You could eat something new every day for years. Krathvor looked at her with new eyes. Why do you offer us this? Because we would like to be friends, Dr. Vasquez said simply. And friends share food. It's what we do. The commander was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. We came here to hunt your kind. I know, Dr. Vasquez said, but hunting is tiring work. Wouldn't you rather relax? We have comfortable places to rest, soft beds, climate control, entertainment, and all the food you could ever want. This is not how prey behaves, Thesk said, suspicion creeping back into his voice. Dr. Vasquez laughed. Oh, we're not prey, we're just friendly. There's a difference. She reached into her bag and pulled out something small and round. Here, this is called a ball. It's for playing. Would you like to try? She tossed it gently toward Thesk. Without thinking, he caught it in his primary claw. The ball was soft and squeaked when he squeezed it. Something stirred in Thesk's brain, something ancient and unexpected. He squeezed the ball again, enjoying the sound it made. Good boy, Dr. Vasquez said automatically. Thesk's tail wagged. Neither of them noticed, but Dr. Vasquez's assistant was taking very careful notes. The news of the first contact spread through human space like wildfire. The terrifying Vorax, the galaxy's most feared predators, had been fed steak and given squeaky toys. They had not attacked. They had not killed anyone. They had, according to Dr. Vasquez's official report, been very well behaved. The Galactic Council was skeptical. This is impossible, declared Councillor Vreen of the Horthak Dominion. The Vorax have never been peaceful. They have never accepted food from prey species. They have never played with toys. This report must be fabricated. Ambassador Santos, who had replaced the retired Secretary General as Earth's representative to the Council, smiled patiently. I assure you, Counselor, the report is accurate. In fact, Commander Krathvor and his crew have accepted our invitation to visit Earth. They're quite looking forward to it. The council chamber fell silent. Several representatives fainted. One fled the room entirely. You have invited Vorax to your homeworld, Counselor Vreen whispered. You have doomed your species. We have extended an invitation to potential friends, Santos corrected. Would you like to come observe? We promise it will be educational. The Vorax ship landed on Earth 3 weeks later, touching down at a specially prepared facility in rural Montana. The location had been chosen carefully. It was remote enough to prevent panic, but close enough to human settlements for the plan to work. Dr. Vasquez was waiting with her team. They had spent the intervening weeks preparing. There were kitchens stocked with every kind of meat humanity had to offer. There were comfortable sleeping quarters designed for beings of the Vorax's size. There were open fields for exercise and play. And there were dogs. Lots and lots of dogs. Why dogs? Her assistant, a young man named James, had asked during the planning phase. Dr. Vasquez had smiled. Because dogs are humanity's greatest achievement. We took wolves, apex predators in their own right, and turned them into our best friends. If we could do it with wolves, we can do it with anything. The Vorax are not wolves, James pointed out. They're intelligent. They have civilization, technology, space travel. Intelligence doesn't make them immune to friendship, Dr. Vasquez said. It might even make it easier. Wolves didn't understand why we were being nice to them. The Vorax will. When Krathvor descended from his ship, he was greeted by something he had never encountered before. A golden retriever named Max bounded up to him, tail wagging furiously, and dropped a tennis ball at his feet. The Vorax commander stared down at the small creature. By every law of nature, he should have viewed it as prey. Instead, he felt something strange stirring in his chest. What is this? He asked. This is a dog, Dr. Vasquez explained. His name is Max. He wants you to throw the ball. Why? Because it's fun for both of you. Go ahead, try it. Krathvor picked up the ball. It was wet with dog saliva. He threw it, perhaps harder than necessary. Max sprinted after it, caught it midair, and brought it back immediately. The dog sat at his feet, tail still wagging, waiting for another throw. Krathvor threw the ball again, and again, and again. An hour later he was still throwing and Max was still fetching. The commander's crew had joined in, each of them paired with their own dog. The Montana facility echoed with the sounds of Vorax warriors playing fetch. The Galactic Council observers, watching from a safe distance via drone, could not believe what they were seeing. They are playing, Counselor Vreen said, his voice hollow with disbelief. The Vorax are playing with animals. The humans call it bonding, Ambassador Krickstall said. He had returned to observe, driven by morbid curiosity. They believe it creates emotional connections. Emotional connections with Vorax, Vreen shook his head. Impossible. But as they watched, Thesk sat down on the grass, and his dog, a German shepherd named Luna, climbed into his lap. The massive Vorax warrior began to pet her, his deadly claws gentle as they stroked her fur. Who is a good girl? Thesk murmured, his translator rendering the words in his native language's equivalent of baby talk. Who is the goodest girl? The observers were speechless. Over the following weeks, the integration continued. The Vorax learned to cook, guided by Dr. Vasquez and her team. They discovered the pleasure of creating food rather than simply consuming it. Krathvor became particularly obsessed with barbecue, spending hours perfecting his brisket technique. They learned to sleep in beds, finding them far more comfortable than the hard surfaces of their ship. They learned about entertainment, becoming particularly fond of action movies and nature documentaries. They learned about music, and while their singing voices left something to be desired, they had an unexpected talent for drums. But most importantly, they learned about friendship. I do not understand, Krathvor said one evening, sitting on the facility's porch with Dr. Vasquez. Max was asleep at his feet. The setting sun painted the Montana sky in shades of orange and gold. All my life, I was taught that other species existed to be hunted, that our purpose was to dominate, to prove our superiority. But this, he gestured at the peaceful scene around them. This feels better. That's because it is better, Dr. Vasquez said. Hunting is lonely, fighting is exhausting, but friendship makes life worth living. My people will not believe me when I tell them. Then don't tell them, she suggested. Show them, bring them here, let them experience it for themselves. Krathvor was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached down and gently scratched Max behind the ears. The dog's tail thumped happily against the wooden boards. I will need more dogs, he said finally. Dr. Vasquez smiled. That can be arranged. 6 months after first contact, Krathvor's ship departed Earth, but it was no longer a hunting vessel. The bone decorations had been removed, replaced with photographs of sunsets and dogs. The trophy room had been converted into a kitchen, and in the cargo hold were 300 dogs, 50 cattle, 20 pigs, and enough cooking supplies to last for years. Also in the cargo hold were 10 human volunteers, carefully selected by Dr. Vasquez. Their mission was simple: go to the Vorax homeworld and make friends. The Galactic Council watched the ship depart with a mixture of horror and fascination. They had been monitoring the situation closely, waiting for the inevitable moment when the Vorax reverted to their predatory nature. That moment never came. What have the humans done? Counselor Vreen whispered. Ambassador Krickstall, who had spent considerable time studying human history, answered thoughtfully. They have done what they always do. They have found something wild and dangerous, and they have decided to make it their friend. But the Vorax cannot be tamed. They said the same thing about wolves, Krickstall said, and horses, and cats. The humans have a word for this. They call it domestication. You cannot domesticate an intelligent species. The Menthian ambassador's eye stalks swiveled toward the departing ship. I am beginning to think that the humans can domesticate anything. On the ship, Thesk was teaching Luna how to navigate in zero gravity. The dog was wearing a specially designed spacesuit, her tail wagging despite the awkward constraints. Every time she successfully pushed off a wall to reach him, Thesk would give her a treat and tell her she was the best girl in the universe. In the kitchen, Krathvor was showing one of the human volunteers his brisket recipe. He had modified it for Vorax tastes, adding extra spices and a longer smoking time. The human, a young chef named Carlos, was taking careful notes. The secret, Krathvor explained, is patience. You cannot rush good food. You must let it develop, let the flavors mature. Carlos nodded. That's true for a lot of things, not just cooking. Krathvor considered this. You are wise for one so young. I learned from my grandmother. She always said that the best things in life take time. Your grandmother sounds like a worthy hunter. Carlos laughed. She made the best tamales in all of Mexico. I guess that's a kind of hunting. What are tamales? Krathvor asked. His interest immediately piqued. Carlos grinned. Let me show you. And so the ship sailed through space, carrying its unusual cargo toward an uncertain future. But everyone on board, human and Vorax alike, felt something they had rarely felt before: hope. The Vorax homeworld was called Krath, a name that translated roughly to place of the strong. It was a harsh planet, with jagged mountains, deep canyons, and vast plains of red grass that rustled in the constant wind. The sky was a deep purple, lit by 2 suns that never set at the same time, creating a world of eternal twilight. When Krathvor's ship landed, the entire population turned out to watch. They had received his transmissions, of course. They had seen the images of dogs and steaks and sunsets, but seeing it on a screen was different from seeing it in person. The Supreme Hunt Leader, a massive Vorax named Tharngor, was waiting at the landing site. He was even larger than Krathvor and considerably less pleased. You bring prey to our homeworld, Tharngor growled as the humans descended from the ship. You bring their animals, you bring their food. Have you lost your mind, Commander? Krathvor stood his ground. I bring friends, Supreme Hunt Leader, and gifts. We do not need friends. We are Vorax. With respect, Supreme Hunt Leader, I thought the same thing. Then I tried their food. Krathvor gestured to Carlos, who was carrying a cooler. May I demonstrate? Tharngor's eyes narrowed. This is not how Vorax solve disputes. It's not a dispute, Krathvor said. It's a meal, please give it one chance. The Supreme Hunt Leader looked at the gathered crowd, then back at the strange ship with its photographs and its lack of trophies. Something had clearly changed in Krathvor. The commander who had left was a killer. The one who returned seemed almost peaceful. One meal, Tharngor said finally. Then we discuss what is to be done with you and your prey. The humans set up their cooking stations in the main plaza of the Vorax capital city. Word had spread quickly, and thousands of Vorax gathered to watch. Most were skeptical. Some were hostile. A few were curious. Carlos and his team worked efficiently. They had brought portable grills, smokers, fryers, and ovens. They had ingredients for 100 different dishes. They had planned for this moment for months. The first dish was simple, grilled steak, seasoned with salt, pepper, and garlic. It was the same thing Dr. Vasquez had served Krathvor at first contact. Carlos believed in starting with the basics. Tharngor took the offered plate with clear reluctance. He sniffed the meat, his nostrils flaring. Then, watched by thousands of his people, he took a bite. His eyes went wide. This, he said slowly, is not what I expected. There's more, Carlos said, much more. What followed was a feast unlike anything the Vorax had ever experienced. There were ribs and brisket and pulled pork. There were burgers and hot dogs and fried chicken. There were tacos and tamales and enchiladas. There were pizzas with dozens of different toppings. And for dessert, there was chocolate cake, ice cream, and cookies. The Vorax devoured everything. They had never imagined that food could taste like this. On their world, eating was survival. This was something else entirely. This was joy. While the adults were eating, something unexpected happened with the younger Vorax. The children, who had never been taught to fear other species because they had never encountered any, approached the dogs with innocent curiosity. A young Vorax, barely a meter tall, reached out to touch Luna. The German shepherd, trained to be gentle, sat still and let herself be petted. The child's face lit up with wonder. She's soft, the child said, and warm. Thesk nodded proudly. Her name is Luna, she's my best friend. Can she be my friend too? She can be everyone's friend. That's what dogs do. Within hours, the younger generation of Vorax had completely adopted the dogs. They played fetch and tug-of-war. They learned to throw balls and give treats. They discovered the particular joy of having a dog fall asleep in their lap. The older Vorax watched with a mixture of confusion and concern, but they were too full of good food to complain. That night, Supreme Hunt Leader Tharngor sat with Krathvor under the purple sky. Both of them were uncomfortably full. It was a sensation neither had experienced before. I have led our people for 30 years, Tharngor said. I have conquered a dozen worlds. I have killed more prey than I can count, and none of it made me feel like this. Like what? Krathvor asked. Satisfied, Tharngor admitted. Content. I do not know the word for it in our language. The humans call it happiness. Tharngor rolled the word around in his mouth. Happiness. It is a strange concept for a predator. Perhaps, Krathvor said, or perhaps we have been predators for so long that we forgot there was anything else. The Supreme Hunt Leader was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. What do the humans want from us? Friendship, trade, peace. That's all. That's all. They are strange creatures. They do not want to conquer us. They do not want to exploit us. They just want to be friends. And in exchange, they will teach us to cook, to farm, to raise animals instead of hunting them. They will give us dogs and music and art. They will show us a different way to live. Tharngor looked at the plaza below, where Vorax's children were still playing with dogs, their laughter carrying on the wind. It was a sound he had never heard before. Vorax did not laugh. At least, they hadn't until now. "Our ancestors would call this weakness," he said. "Our ancestors never tasted chocolate cake," Krathvor replied. For the first time in his life, Tharngor laughed. It was a rusty, unpracticed sound, but it was unmistakably a laugh. "Very well," he said. "We will try this friendship, but if the humans betray us, I will eat them myself." "They won't," Krathvor said with certainty. "I've lived among them. They are strange, but they are honest. When they say they want to be friends, they mean it." And so began the first generation of change. Within a year, the Vorax homeworld had been transformed. Farms replaced hunting grounds. Kitchens replaced trophy rooms. Dog parks appeared in every city. The ancient traditions of the hunt were not forgotten, but they were modified. Now the Vorax hunted for sport, not survival, and they always released their prey at the end. The first generation of Vorax pups raised with dogs was remarkable. They grew up seeing humans not as prey, but as friends. They learned to cook almost as soon as they learned to walk. They developed tastes for music and art and literature. They were still strong, still fierce, still proud, but they were no longer killers. The Galactic Council watched this transformation with amazement. Species that had feared the Vorax for millennia began to reach out, tentatively, to open diplomatic channels. The Vorax, to everyone's shock, accepted. "They invited us to dinner," Councillor Vreen reported, his voice still incredulous. "They are hosting a feast for the entire council. They want to show us their new recipes." Ambassador Crickstall, who had become something of an expert on humanity, nodded sagely. "That is how it begins, with food. Then come the dogs, then the music. Before you know it, you are watching movies together and discussing your feelings." "That sounds concerning." "It is," the Menthian agreed. "And yet I find myself strangely tempted to try it." On Earth, Dr. Vasquez received reports of the progress with quiet satisfaction. Her team had grown from 10 volunteers to hundreds. They were spread across Vorax space now, teaching cooking classes and running dog training programs and organizing cultural exchanges. "You know," James said one day, reviewing the latest data, "we're basically domesticating an entire species." "Don't say that," Dr. Vasquez replied. "We're making friends, it's different." "Is it though? The Vorax are completely dependent on us for their food supply now. Their children are being raised alongside our dogs. Their culture is changing to match ours. How is that not domestication?" Dr. Vasquez considered this. Domestication implies control. We're not controlling them, we're offering them options. They're choosing to accept. "And if they choose to stop?" "Then they stop. We won't force them," she smiled. "But they won't stop. Have you ever tried to take a dog away from a child? It doesn't end well." James laughed despite himself. "You're evil, you know that." "I'm friendly," she corrected. "There's a difference." 20 years passed. A new generation of Vorax had grown up knowing nothing but friendship with humans. They had never hunted prey for food. They had never worn the bones of the defeated. They had never known the old ways at all. Krathvor, now elderly by Vorax standards, had become something of a legend among both species. He was known as the first friend, the one who had shown the Vorax that there was another way. He spent his final years teaching young warriors the art of barbecue and playing fetch with his latest dog, a golden retriever named Max III. When he died, peacefully in his sleep with Max III curled at his feet, both planets mourned. His funeral was broadcast across the galaxy. Representatives from 30 different species attended. Even the Galactic Council sent condolences. "He changed everything," Thesk said in his eulogy. He was old himself now, his once fierce features softened by age and contentment. Luna had passed years ago, but her descendants still followed him everywhere. He showed us that strength was not about conquest, it was about the courage to change. The second generation of change brought new developments. Vorax engineers, freed from the constant demands of war, turned their formidable intellects to other pursuits. They designed better farming equipment, more efficient cooking methods, and the galaxy's most sophisticated pet toys. Vorax technology, once feared as instruments of destruction, became sought after for its quality and innovation. Trade flourished. The Vorax had access to resources and materials that other species had never dared approach. Now, with the threat of hunting removed, they became valued trading partners. Vorax merchants traveled the galaxy, always accompanied by their dogs, selling goods and making friends wherever they went. But not everyone was happy with these changes. In the remote mountains of Krath, a group of traditionalists gathered. They called themselves the True Hunt, and they believed that the Vorax had lost their way. Their leader was a grizzled warrior named Verktooth, who had refused to accept the new order. "We were conquerors," Verktooth told his followers. "We were feared across the galaxy, now look at us. We play with animals, we eat cooked food, we have become pets ourselves, pets of the humans." His followers numbered only a few hundred, but they were dedicated. They trained in the old ways, hunted live prey, and rejected everything the humans had brought. They were waiting for the right moment to strike. That moment came during the Festival of Friendship, an annual celebration held in the capital city. Representatives from dozens of species attended, including a human delegation led by Dr. Vasquez's successor, a young woman named Sarah Chen. The True Hunt attacked at dawn, sweeping down from the mountains with a savagery the new generation had never witnessed. They targeted the human compound first, killing the guards before anyone could sound an alarm. Sarah Chen was woken by the sound of screaming. She grabbed her emergency communicator and sent a distress signal, then gathered the human civilians and retreated to the reinforced shelter they had built for exactly this purpose. Years of preparation had taught them that peace was precious but fragile. "What's happening?" one of the younger workers asked, fear in his voice. "Traditionalists," Sarah said calmly. "We knew this might happen eventually. The shelter will hold. Help is coming." "How can you be sure?" Sarah smiled grimly. "Because we have friends." The response came faster than even she expected. The new generation of Vorax had grown up alongside humans, eating their food, playing with their dogs, absorbing their values. They had also absorbed something else, a fierce loyalty to their friends. Thesk's grandson, a young warrior named Krath Thesk, led the counterattack. He had been raised with humans from birth. His best friend was a human boy named Miguel. His dog was a pit bull named Rocky who had once saved his life during a hiking accident. "The True Hunt threatens our friends," he told his forces. "They threaten our way of life. They say we have become weak. Let us show them what strength really means." The battle was fierce but brief. The traditionalists had numbers and ferocity, but the new generation had something more. They had purpose. They were not fighting for glory or conquest. They were fighting for their friends, their families, their dogs. They were fighting for everything they loved. Verktooth fell in single combat against Krath Thesk. The young Vorax was smaller, less experienced in the old ways of war. But he had something Verktooth had lost long ago, something worth fighting for. "You have betrayed our heritage," Verktooth snarled as they circled each other. "Our heritage was death," Krath Thesk replied. "We have built something better. Friendship, love, these are weaknesses." "Then why are you losing?" Verktooth lunged. Krath Thesk sidestepped and struck. The old warrior fell and did not rise. In the aftermath, the surviving traditionalists were given a choice: accept the new ways or leave. Most chose to stay. Faced with the clear evidence that their way of life had been defeated, they found it surprisingly easy to change. It helped that the victory feast included the best barbecue anyone had ever tasted. "I did not expect them to surrender so quickly," Sarah Chen admitted to Krathesk over dinner. The young Vorax shrugged, a gesture he had picked up from his human friends. They were hungry. Hungry for food, yes, but also hungry for belonging. The old ways gave them purpose, but it was a lonely purpose. We offer them something better. And if they attack again? They won't, not after today. The true hunt believed that friendship made us weak. We proved them wrong. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. Dr. Vasquez used to say that friendship is just another word for strength. I never really understood what she meant until now. She was a wise human. She was. She taught us that the best way to defeat an enemy is to make them a friend. Krathesk smiled, showing teeth that his ancestors had used to terrify the galaxy. Then let us make more friends. The Galactic Council held an emergency session following the True Hunt uprising. There was considerable debate about what had happened and what it meant for the future. The traditionalists nearly succeeded, Councillor Vreen argued. The humans were almost killed. This proves that the Vorax cannot be trusted. Ambassador Krickstall, now ancient but still sharp, disagreed. The traditionalists were a small minority. The majority of Vorax fought to protect the humans. Does that not prove the opposite? One incident does not prove anything. 2 generations of peace prove quite a lot. The human representative, Ambassador Santos's granddaughter Alina, spoke up. My grandmother believed that all species have the capacity for friendship. She was right. The Vorax proved it today. They could have used this chaos as an excuse to return to their old ways. Instead, they fought to preserve what we have built together. Pretty words, Vreen said dismissively. True words, Alina replied. And here is another truth. The humans who were attacked did not flee. They did not call for evacuation. They sheltered and waited for help, knowing it would come. That is trust. That is friendship. That is what 2 generations of cooperation have built. The Council voted that day to officially recognize the Human-Vorax Alliance. It was the first time in galactic history that a former predator species had been accepted as a full member of civilized society. The vote was not unanimous, but it was overwhelming. On Krath, the news was celebrated with a feast that lasted 3 days. Humans and Vorax danced together, ate together, laughed together. The dogs ran freely through the streets, chasing balls and accepting treats from everyone. Krathesk stood on a balcony overlooking the celebration, Rocky at his side. Miguel joined him, carrying 2 plates of brisket. 2 generations, Miguel said, handing over a plate. That's all it took. 2 generations and a lot of food, Krathesk corrected. And dogs, don't forget the dogs. Rocky barked in agreement. Do you think it will last? Miguel asked. Krathesk considered the question carefully. Below them, a Vorax child was teaching a human child how to throw a ball properly, while their dogs watched with patient interest. Yes, he said finally, because we have built something worth keeping, and we will fight to protect it, not because we have to, but because we want to. That's friendship, Miguel said. That's everything, Krathesk agreed. The 3rd generation was born into a galaxy transformed. The children of this era, both human and Vorax, had never known a time when their species were enemies. To them, the old stories of hunting and conquest were ancient history, as distant and strange as tales of dragons and knights. Krathesk became the first Vorax ambassador to the Galactic Council. He brought Rocky's great-grandpup with him, a gentle giant named Storm who became the unofficial mascot of galactic diplomacy. Other species began requesting dogs of their own, and humanity was happy to oblige. Within a decade, dogs had spread to 50 different worlds. Cats followed shortly after, then horses, then a bewildering variety of Earth animals. The galaxy, it seemed, had an endless appetite for human pets. I do not understand, Councillor Vreen's successor admitted during a diplomatic reception. Your species conquers not through war but through friendship. You have changed the Vorax. You have changed the galaxy, and all you asked for in return was trade agreements and cultural exchange." Elena Santos's daughter, now serving as Earth's ambassador, smiled. "We didn't conquer anyone, we just made friends." But the effect is the same. The Vorax were the galaxy's most feared predators. Now they host cooking shows and run animal shelters. Would you rather they were still hunting? The counselor had no response to that. On the Vorax homeworld, the transformation was complete. The harsh, militaristic society of old had given way to something entirely different. Cities had parks and gardens. Schools taught cooking alongside combat. The ancient hunting traditions had evolved into competitive sports where no one got hurt. The greatest change was in the Vorax themselves. 3 generations of living alongside humans, of raising children with dogs, of sharing food and laughter and sorrow had altered them at a fundamental level. Their aggressive instincts had not disappeared, but they had been redirected. They still competed fiercely, but now they competed to see who could make the best barbecue, who could train the most obedient dog, who could throw the most spectacular festival. The annual Friendship Games became the highlight of the galactic calendar. Species from across the galaxy gathered to compete in cooking contests, dog shows, and collaborative art projects. The Vorax were perennial favorites, their natural intensity channeled into passionate pursuits of culinary excellence. Old Thesk lived to see it all. He was ancient now, the last surviving member of the original hunting party that had first encountered humanity. His body was failing, but his mind was still sharp, and he spent his final days telling stories to anyone who would listen. "Tell us about the first time you saw a dog," a group of young Vorax children begged. They were gathered around his chair, their own dogs sleeping at their feet. Thesk smiled, his aged features softening with memory. "Her name was Luna. She was a German shepherd. The humans gave her to me the second day after we landed on Earth." "Were you scared?" one child asked. "Scared? No. Confused. We had come to hunt the humans. We were the greatest predators in the galaxy. And this small creature walked up to me and dropped a ball at my feet. It was the strangest thing that had ever happened to me." "Did you throw it?" "I did, and when she brought it back wagging her tail, something changed inside me. I didn't understand it at the time. I didn't have words for it, but later I learned the human term." "What was it?" the children asked in unison. "Joy," Thesk said. "Pure, simple joy. I had never felt it before. None of us had. We were so focused on proving our strength that we never stopped to enjoy life. Luna taught me that there was more to existence than hunting and killing. She taught me how to be happy." He died 3 days later, peacefully in his sleep. The last of the old hunters was gone, and with him went the final living memory of what the Vorax had been before humanity changed them. His funeral was the largest the galaxy had ever seen. Representatives from every species attended. Humans and Vorax stood side by side, weeping together, remembering together. The ceremony ended with a traditional Vorax howl, but it was no longer a cry of war. It was a song of mourning and celebration, of loss and gratitude. Krath Thesk, who had become the unofficial leader of the Vorax, spoke at the memorial service. He was middle-aged now, with gray streaks in his hide and wisdom in his 4 eyes. "My grandfather told me a story once," he said, "about the day he first met a human. He had come to their world to hunt them. Instead, they fed him. They gave him a dog. They offered him friendship without conditions or expectations. He always said that was the bravest thing he ever saw. Not a warrior facing down an enemy. Not a hero sacrificing themselves for glory. Just a small human woman walking onto a ship full of predators, carrying food and a squeaky ball." Dr. Elena Vasquez never fired a weapon. She never led an army. She never conquered anything. But she changed the galaxy more than any warrior in history. She taught us that there is no enemy that cannot become a friend. She taught us that kindness is stronger than violence. She taught us that the best way to end a war is to share a meal. My grandfather lived to see our people transformed. He saw us go from the galaxy's most feared predators to its most enthusiastic cooks. He saw us adopt dogs and learn to laugh and discover the pleasure of friendship. And he was happy, happier than any Vorax had ever been in all our long history. That is the legacy of humanity's gift to us, not conquest, not submission, joy. The crowd was silent as he finished. Then, slowly, the applause began. It started with the humans, spread to the Vorax, and then to every species present. The sound grew until it shook the very walls. Afterward, at the reception, an old Menthian approached Krathesk. It was Ambassador Krikstal's grandson, who had inherited his ancestor's position and his curiosity about humanity. "My grandfather was there at the beginning," the Menthian said. "He warned humanity about your people. He said you could not be stopped, could not be reasoned with, could not be changed." He was right about most things, Krathesk acknowledged, but wrong about that. How did they do it? How did a species so small, so fragile, so new to the galaxy change the most dangerous predators ever known? Krathesk thought about this for a long moment. Then he smiled, showing teeth that his ancestors had used to terrify the galaxy, but that he used to grin at his friends. "They gave us something worth living for," he said. "Something beyond hunting and killing. They showed us that strength is not about domination. It is about having something precious and being willing to protect it." But how? What was the secret? There was no secret, just food and friendship and dogs, just patience and kindness and time. 3 generations of humans treating us like friends instead of enemies. That's all it took. The Menthian considered this. It sounds too simple. The best things usually are. Outside, the celebration continued. Humans and Vorax danced together under alien stars. Dogs played with children of both species. Someone had set up a barbecue, and the smell of cooking meat filled the air. It was, Krathesk thought, exactly what Thesk would have wanted. The historical records would later note that humanity had domesticated the Vorax in 3 generations. But that was not quite accurate. What humanity had done was show the Vorax a different way to live. They had offered food instead of violence, friendship instead of fear, and joy instead of glory. The Vorax had chosen to accept. And in that choice, both species had found something greater than either could have achieved alone. Not conqueror and conquered, not predator and prey, just friends sharing a meal under the stars with their dogs sleeping peacefully at their feet. When Xeno predators challenged humanity, humanity did not fight back. They did not run. They did not hide. They made dinner, brought dogs, and asked if the predators wanted to be friends. It was, everyone agreed, the most human thing imaginable. And it worked.